Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to present for second reading a bill shortly entitled Real Estate Brokers and Agents. Mr. Speaker, the purpose of the bill is to provide for the licensing of real estate brokers and real estate agents and to regulate and control the practice of a real estate business. Mr. Speaker, the bill contains some 52 clauses. I would say, generally, I would describe this as a short bill, but it is significant for improving the business environment in the country and to provide structure for realtors and the service sector in general. Mr. Speaker, the real estate sector in St. Lucia is a major contributor to the economy. The country benefits considerably from that sector, not just from the vendor's tax and stamp duty on the sales and financing of these sales, but even more so from the spillover to the various sectors and stakeholders who serve as a foundation to the industry. Mr. Speaker, the industry includes the lawyers, bankers, surveyors, contractors, construction workers, and of course, the glue holding the entire sector together, the real estate agents and brokers. Mr. Speaker, my ministry, the Ministry of Commerce, is tasked, among other things, with the responsibility to facilitate commerce, enterprise development, and manufacturing. And with this overarching mandate of creating an environment which will bolster the economy while protecting the consumers. Cognizant of this mandate, Mr. Speaker, my ministry continues to hold dialogue with key business groups to address the issues affecting them. So, Mr. Speaker, the Realtors Association of St. Lucia approached the Ministry of Commerce with not just concerns, but with a request for assistance in establishing safeguards and parameters for the important real estate industry. Mr. Speaker, I wish to recognize and place on record our appreciation to the Realtors Association, the President, Mr. Anselm Matre, and his executive in this regard. Mr. Speaker, many persons, entities, or groupings request legislative intervention, but few take the step to engage in the development of policies and draft legislation. In this instance, Mr. Speaker, the efforts in developing this bill were accelerated by the efforts of the Realtors Association, which took the responsibility of, and at times at considerable cost to them, in engaging persons to aid in the development of the required instructive and framework documents. This, Mr. Speaker, is what I see as citizens' empowerment, and that I am pleased that as a government, we have set the environment for citizen participation. Mr. Speaker, I interpret this as a government that continues to put the people first. Mr. Speaker, my ministry and the Office of the Attorney General did not merely accept the draft as presented. However, the initial draft and later subsequent policy framework served as a roadmap to appreciate the concerns, challenges, and requests of the association and how and what could be done to address them. So over the past years, the Ministry of Commerce, in collaboration with the Legislative Drafting Unit of the AG's chambers, engaged in a lengthy review process leading to the bill that we have today. Mr. Speaker, permit me to highlight some provisions of the Real Estate Agent and Brokers Bill that is now before us. Part 1 of the bill creates and outlines the operations of the entity to be called the Real Estate Board. Clause 4 of the bill provides for the Real Estate Board and that the board shall comprise 5 persons appointed by the Minister of Commerce, and that includes an attorney at law of not less than 5 years standing, nominated by the St. Lucia Bar Association, a senior technical officer from the Ministry of Commerce, a person nominated by the St. Lucia Coalition of Services Industry, Inc., and 2 persons nominated by the Realtors Association or such other bodies approved by Cabinet. Mr. Speaker, the composition of the board was well considered to ensure the interests of the public, including vendors and buyers of real estate, is protected. Mr. Speaker, Part 1 of the bill also states 6 functions of the board. 1, to consider and determine an application for a license to practice as a real estate business. 2, to issue a license with or without conditions for the practice of a real estate business. 3, to keep and maintain a register of real estate brokers and real estate agents licensed under this Act. 4, to make internal rules governing its procedures subject to the approval of the Minister. And 5, to cooperate with a government ministry, department, or statutory body responsible for the enforcement of the laws of St. Lucia relating to the practice of a real estate business. And 6, to perform other functions specified under this Act. Mr. Speaker, this is to ensure that there is structure, documentation, and the persons transacting your business and my business are licensed. Mr. Speaker, Part 2 of the bill provides a framework for licensing of real estate brokers and real estate agents. Pursuant to Clause 23 of the bill, a real estate broker or real estate agent shall not engage in the practice of a real estate business unless he or she is a holder of a valid license. What this provision seeks to do, Mr. Speaker, is to ensure that all persons who wish to hold themselves as realtors, as an agent or broker, seek and obtain a license pursuant to this legislation. Mr. Speaker, this section does not seek to prevent the people of St. Lucia from buying or selling properties. However, Mr. Speaker, what it does in Clause 23, that isolated transactions not undertaken in the course or in the furtherance of or with intent to carry on the practice of a real estate agent are not covered under Clause 23. Simply put, Mr. Speaker, if someone is selling a house or a piece of land, this is a one-off transaction and there is no intent to carry on the practice of the real estate business. That person does not require a license. I think that's an important clause for persons to understand. If John Public has one transaction, they do not fall or require a license under this act. Mr. Speaker, I want to look on page 21 of the Act and clause 23, where the penalties, Mr. Speaker, are outlined. And that is page 21 of the bill before us. And I want members to follow on that. Under clause 23, Mr. Speaker, a person who contravenes subsection 1 commits an offense, and in the case of persons who derive a monetary or material benefit from a transaction while engaging in the practice of a real estate business, is liable to a summary conviction and 1, the payment of 7% of the value of the transaction that is being held. B, in the case of a person who does not derive a monetary or material benefit from a transaction while engaged in the practice of a real estate business, is liable on summary conviction to a fine not exceeding $10,000 or 6 months imprisonment. Mr. Speaker, the rest of Part 3 of the bill outlines the conditions, effects, duration, and other parameters specific to licenses. Part 2 also makes provision for the suspension and revocation of licenses, and quite importantly, the appeal from decisions of the board by aggrieved parties. Mr. Speaker, Part 3 of the bill provides for the obligation of our real estate brokers and agents. We recognize, Mr. Speaker, that these persons often hold funds on behalf of clients and charge fees for their services. These activities, Mr. Speaker, should be sufficiently regulated to protect our citizens from abuse by bad actors in the sector. So, Mr. Speaker, Section 46 and 47 on page 32 of the bill, and that section, we have a section, and the caption is, clients' money to be held in trust. And I read Section 45, a real estate broker or a real estate agent who receives clients' money holds it in trust for the beneficiary. And under subsection 2, a real estate broker or real estate agent should not make clients' money available for the payment of a debt or liability to any person other than the person for whom he or she holds the client's money in trust. And Mr. Speaker, Section 46 goes out to spell out how the broker must maintain proper accounts for the funds of the persons that he or she represents. Mr. Speaker, Part 4 of the bill provides a mechanism for complaints in cases of misconduct by agents and brokers. The mechanism for complaints under the Consumer Protection Act is expanded at clause 49 of the bill to facilitate complaints to the Consumer Affairs Department where brokers and agents abuse their office or license. Mr. Speaker, clause 50 of the bill outlines no less than 11 acts that are considered misconduct by agents and brokers. Mr. Speaker, Clause 52 of the bill makes provision for the minister to make regulations, Mr. Speaker, and I will spell this out because it is very important. The minister may, on the recommendation of the board, make regulations to give effect to this act. Without limiting the generality of subsection 1, the minister may make regulations to prescribe 1. The code of ethics and standards that governs the conduct of real estate brokers and real estate agents. 2. The form and manner in which an application under this act is made and the particulars to be given in an application. 3. The fees to be paid under this act. 4. The form of the license to be issued under this act. 5. The manner in which and the time at which the board shall hear a person whose license is proposed to suspend or revoke. 6. Any additional qualifications to be satisfied by an applicant for licensing as a real estate broker or agent. Mr. Speaker, we respect and appreciate that many may hear of the reading of this bill, and many may worry that this government is seeking to over-regulate. We wish to assure the people of St. Lucia that we see this bill as a means of ensuring that the players in this very important industry are adequately governed, will be subject to adequate rules and regulations, and that the citizens can rest assured and be certain that these persons are fit and proper. In the event, Mr. Speaker, that these players fail our citizenry, a proper mechanism would exist to serve and provide recourse. Mr. Speaker, this bill has certainly made the rounds. Our ministry had initially engaged the Realtors Association in the development of the bill. Not satisfied with the reviews by that entity alone, and fearing that non-members of the association would not have a chance to provide feedback on the bill, my ministry publicly disseminated the bill to other stakeholders and non-members. After receiving and incorporating some of the views and comments received during that review process, the bill was made available to the general public. Mr. Speaker, I recall that I sat on a panel at the NTN and GIS studio, again distilling and discussing the content of this very important bill, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this step was taken to ensure that everyone, every agent, every stakeholder in the sector had an opportunity to comment on the bill, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to report, as of the 1st of January, we received an email from one Mika Landers, who said he's a realtor, and provided quite a bit of detailed explanation and concerns that some we have taken into consideration and others we will be addressing in the regulations. So, Mr. Speaker, we are satisfied that this bill, which has benefited from much input and review, is a step in the right direction in molding a stronger, safer, and more reliable real estate sector in St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, while others are taking steps to destroy our country, we continue as a government to put in the people of St. Lucia first.
That's right.
I urge members to support the brokers and agent bill. I thank you.